Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today on Oklahoma Gardening, we begin with natural dyes and textiles. Host Casey Hentges shows off an indigo plant that's growing in our garden. Then we find out how dyes are created from natural sources like indigo and turmeric plants. And we visit an Oklahoma farm that is growing cotton. We also get a look at a comparison of cool season grasses that have been overseeded in a bermudagrass lawn. And OSU Assistant Extension Specialist Shelly Mitchell has one more plant relationship.
Every day we're influenced by plants in ways that we don't often think about. But we're all typically wearing clothes, and many of those clothes come from plants. Not only do the fibers come from plants, but also the color comes from plants. Today we're going to look at synthetic and natural dyes and the plants that they come from, as well as the fiber and how it all results in the clothes that we're wearing. Plants provide us with so many things, and in our modern world, the top of that list is food and also aesthetics. But over the hundreds of years, they have provided us with many things, including natural dyes. We were working with a plant earlier this season, which is called pink Chinese indigo, which is a nice perennial that you can grow in your garden. Now, while this plant blooms in late spring, early summer, it is not the true indigo that we get our indigo dye from. All of this conversation behind the scenes led us to wonder what the plant was that we get true indigo dye from, natural indigo dye from. And that led us to getting this plant behind me here. This is Indigo tinctoria, and you can see it has a very similar look to the pink Chinese indigo, but it's slightly different. This is an annual, so it is tropical. It will die out for us this season. It does have a similar compound, pinnately compound leaf as the pink Chinese indigo. The flowers are slightly different, but you can see that it has a number of racemes that are still left to bloom on this. Now, we did get a little anxious because as an annual, we were expecting this plant to bloom in late July, early August, but here we are in October and it's just now starting to break bud. So we are getting to see it, but we were a little anxious that it's going to get hit by the freeze, and it may still very well. But what's nice about it are these kind of dark pink flowers. The pink Chinese indigo has a little bit more of a larger flower to it that is a lighter pink, whereas this has more of a structured, upright, almost sort of maroon colored flower to it. So we're anxious to see this continue to bloom. Now, we did buy these as small 4-inch pots, and you can see in this container we have 3 different plants in here. So all of this volume has grown in one season. So if you're interested in this plant, I can't say that it's the showiest plant to add to your garden, especially if it's such a late bloomer. So we're a little curious. We might try it here in the garden, but you might consider putting it in the back of your garden, as it does add some nice foliage, and we'll transition to those flowers later in the season. I do like the form on it though. It has a nice arching habit to its structure, and the leaves are actually where we get the natural indigo dye from. They don't actually come from the flowers, which you might think, but it's a compound that is in the leaves, and through a process of fermentation is how you actually extract that indigo dye. Now, this plant is suspected to be native to tropical Asia and North Africa, but the exact location is not necessarily known because it's been in cultivation for over 4,000 years. In fact, they've even found natural indigo dye amongst the Egyptian mummies. And so all of that use over the years really moved this plant around. You can actually find that it has sort of naturalized in southeastern United States, where in the 1700s it was actually a popular cash crop. Now, even though this plant has fallen out of the limelight since due to synthetic dyes which have become more popular, it's still one to consider thinking about and not forgetting adding to your garden.
Natural dyes are basically colorants that could be derived from plants, roots, leaves, animal, insects, from everywhere that we could derive the natural dyes. And for example, like the deep blue color dyes that could be derived from indigo plant. Also, the deep yellow color that could be derived from the turmeric root, and we could make the dyes and prepare it for dyeing the textile fabrics like cotton cloths, and we could use it in this way. Natural dyes could also be derived from animal based product. For example, people are using squid ink or octopus ink to color their cotton cloths. Natural dyes could come from roots, like this one is the turmeric root, and then we could use this turmeric to make a dye like this, and this dye we could dissolve in the water, which is little bit warm water, and this will help to dye the cotton textile product. For example, this is 100% cotton textile product, and here it is most important things to remember that all the dye, turmeric dyes that may not last on the fabric after washing. So, there is a need for certain fixative agent or mordant that we use. For example, like this one is the salt water, and we could use the salt water or even some vinegar water, we could use it as a mordant to fix that. So, first part is like that we can dissolve the cotton cloths on the salt water for about 1 and 2 hours, and then after that we need to squeeze this cotton cloth, and then we need to dissolve this one in the turmeric dye bath, and if we could keep it for 1 and 2 hours, we could get a color on the textiles product like this. Even it is after 3 washes, it looks like this one. So, it can hold the turmeric dyes on the cotton cloth and make it more colorful. Here one another things like the indigo. Indigo color is also very common, and indigo comes from Indigofera trees or indigo plant. The deep blue color on cotton textile product actually comes naturally from the indigo dye. In general, the indigo dyes cannot be dissolved on the water alone. In this case, we need to use or reduce that, and through the reduction process by using the soda ash or some hydrogen sulfide there. Here, what we can do that we have to put the all indigo color on the water, and then all these hydro stuff and as well as the soda ash in this bath to produce a dye bath. And then if we have a cotton fabrics, we could dissolve this cotton fabrics in this particular color, and in this case what we can see that it will be initially like a green color dyed product there, and this textiles will looks like a green color initially. However, when it will be out of this dye bath, just after oxidation in the air, gradually it will start to give a blue color on this textile product, and then it looks really nice, which is natural, as well as it has the good fixative power on that. If we want, we could add little bit salt to make it more fast on that textile product. History of natural dyes is about 5,000 years old, and many ancient civilizations using these natural dyes from long time. But in the mid of 19th century, we got a lot of synthetic dyes, and that synthetic dyes actually declined the usage of natural dyes in the field. However, in the 21st century, the consumers are more conscious. They are health conscious, they are environmental conscious. So, what they are doing, they are trying to use the natural dyes and on natural fiber to get a colored textile product. In this way, that is why these all natural fibers and the natural dyes are actually sustainable for the environment. At the same time, they actually prohibit us to get exposure from different hazardous chemical and also the waste that generated by these all synthetic dyes. Although there are a lot of synthetic dyes that are most cost effective as well as quick to dye the fabric or color the fabrics, but there are still options. Those who are really environmental conscious and health conscious, they could go for the natural dyes, and natural dyes are really sustainable for the environment, and also they have no hazardous effect on our skins. That we could produce it at home. Like this kit, we could get it in the indigo dye color for this one, and then we could use it at home and to dye our cotton textile product using the dye bath.
So here in north central Oklahoma, our operation operates on a no-till program, and this field was in grain sorghum before, and we came in and sprayed to kill any volunteer wheat, ryegrass, any winter annuals, and came in and planted this cotton in May. So during the summertime, we have a lot of insect pressure. You might have to spray 2 or 3 different times for insects, leaf hoppers. Once the boll develops, you might have some stink bug pressure that you have to spray just to keep that boll safe before it becomes cotton. So before the boll opens, it's all closed, similar to this boll right here. And when this opens, there's seed inside this boll that will be future ginned after harvesting. But the boll is the fruit of the plant. Normally about 2 to 3 weeks before a freeze, we use a product called Effathon that will in turn open the boll. It's a harvest aid along with a defoliant to knock the leaves off the plant, whether you're going to strip it or pick it. Defoliant more or less crunches the leaves, and you'll see the leaves. It more or less knocks the leaves off the plant. This is for the stripper or your picker to not have any leaves in your cotton bale after it is produced in the module. And we strip this cotton here. It does have a lot more material in the bales stripping it, but in turn we feel like it gets more of the cotton off the plant. Also with stripping, you don't have to have water, as a picker requires water to keep the spindles. So after it's harvested, we use it's a stripper baler is what it's called, and it puts it in an 8x8 round bale, which weighs anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. And then from here, we haul them 100 miles northwest to Anthony, Kansas, to a gin up there where it will be further processed. After the cotton is ginned, your cotton is graded on a scale to see strength, durability, and anything that, color, what colors you can dye the cotton to. But then the seed is ginned out to make cattle feed, oils. So many different products go into cotton.
So today we're here at the Oklahoma State Greenhouse Learning Center, and the brand new facility has wonderful indoor space for really cutting edge horticulture production systems, but we also have an outdoor learning space, and that's where we're standing today. And in particular, we're standing on the turfgrass teaching space. And so we're standing on a Rio Bermuda grass lawn that you can see here behind me. Has kind of a strange looking pattern of greens and dark greens and light greens, and it's all part of what we do in teaching, but it makes for a good demonstration for you, the homeowner or the lawn care manager. So this time of year, here in mid-November to early December, we're really thinking about management of cool season lawns, and it really is an ideal time to make one of our last fertilizer applications of the year. Whether or not you're going to use a complete fertilizer because you've got a soil test that suggests some deficiency or not, or a straight nitrogen fertilizer, either way we want to try to make that application at roughly a ½ pound to 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. And in particular, try to use a water-soluble fertilizer that will get into the soil quickly and then taken up by the plant before we get into the very cool months of the year. And so what we can look at in this picture is a great demonstration of really what a brand new tall fescue lawn might look like that was recently seeded as part of our class this past semester. And in the areas that are getting a nitrogen fertilizer, they're very dark green, much higher growth rate as compared to the areas that are not receiving any fertilizer. So we see that particularly in new lawns. We're really trying to make sure that first fall you're getting proper nutrition going into the winter. All right, so we'll take a little closer look at some of these teaching plots we have. And so we have a series of bands, and you can see here a nice dark green patch of Bermuda grass next to a very brown discolored patch. And that's an example of what a good late fertilizer program can do for a warm season grass. But even when we look at this perennial ryegrass next to it, we really can see the difference with dense, vigorous growth, dark green color compared to this thin, sparse turf that's really not as aesthetically pleasing. And it's really all about that fall fertilizer application, particularly in mid-October, which is when this was applied, and then looking forward about mid-November to early December to make that follow-up application. So as part of teaching out here, we established 3 different cool season turf grasses. And what we did is we overseeded those directly into an existing Bermuda grass lawn space we had planted earlier in the year. And we did that largely to have a good demonstration of just the different establishment practices, but certainly using something like a cool season grass into a Bermuda grass is not an uncommon practice for things like sports fields or in some cases home lawns. So if we come look at the first one here, we have a strip here of Kentucky bluegrass that's been seeded into our Bermuda grass space. And one thing you'll probably notice is there's not very much bluegrass in this spot. And so it shows that it's, bluegrasses are a little bit more difficult to establish, and largely all we can see here is the Bermuda grass still sticking through. We compare that to the perennial ryegrass next to it, perhaps one of our easiest to establish grasses, and we have really, it's almost impossible to see the Bermuda grass at this point. Very dense perennial ryegrass establishment. But ryegrass is one of our least hardy grasses, and so we'll expect this to probably die out in the summer. We compare that then finally to our tall fescue, where this is one you may be more familiar with in a home lawn, particularly in a shaded location, and relatively easy to establish, and had a nice establishment here for the lab. And this is one we might be able to hold on to and allow it persist through the summer heat. So in addition to seeing these three species, we can look at how fertilizer response impacts each of these grasses in this fairly newly established lawn. If we look at, for example, this section of the tall fescue, we have a non-fertilized space right here in this band that we applied no fertilizer to, and it's very light colored, low density. Even the grass isn't growing as vigorously. We compare it to this band here that received a fairly high rate of fertilizer in about 4 weeks prior to this shoot. And we see they had a very strong response, good color, good density. And so this time of year, roughly in that early to mid-October, making application, and then again following up in mid-November to late December really helps these cool season grasses get to their best before the cooler months of the year. So one of the things that we can take from this teaching facility is obviously, number one, good sound fertility program, but also when we look at selecting the turfgrass species for your lawn, sometimes it might be worthwhile to include blends or mixtures of different grasses in order to get the advantage of maybe a very fast germinating grass with a grass that has a little more persistence or disease resistance or wear tolerance. And so you see quite often that a lot of commercial products are going to have a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass with tall fescue so that we can get it up and going, and then it will persist and be a nice strong grass for us down the road. For more information, you can look at the Oklahoma State Extension fact sheets for information on grass selection, as well as some information on lawn management and a lawn management calendar.
Living organisms do not live in isolation from each other. They often form relationships, which we call ecological relationships. Ones that form close relationships are called symbiotic relationships, and symbiosis means living together. Now, sometimes these are beneficial relationships, sometimes they're not beneficial, and sometimes they're pretty much neutral. So an example of a relationship that's pretty much neutral is commensalism. That means one species is benefiting, but the other species is not being helped or harmed in any way. So an example of commensalism, when orchids grow on trees, they're not actually tapping into the tree for any nutrients or water, they're just using it as support. And the host tree, it doesn't get affected one way or the other, but the orchid gets a place to live. Same kind of thing happens with plants that have seeds that get taken away by animals, but it doesn't affect the animals. So one example would be cockleburs. The cockleburs, the seeds are inside these little guys, and they don't want to fall right next to their parent plant because that would create competition and harm both of them. So they make these little seeds that have these little hooks on them. So when an animal walks by, the little hooks will take the seed pod further away from the parent. It doesn't hurt the animal. Eventually it falls off the animal, and then the plant has spread further, which is not always a good thing in the case of invasive plants. But that way the plant's been helped and the animal has not suffered at all. So that's one example of commensalism. Incidentally, the barbs on the cocklebur was the inspiration for Velcro.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week, we are bringing our gardening season to a close with a special episode of Oklahoma Gardening, filled with exciting news of fresh starts and old growth that'll warm you up for the cold winter. Until then, we wish you health and wellness, and we'll see you next week for more Oklahoma Gardening. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.